Hello and welcome to part 8 of the Scrolls of Ezekiel. We are going to be reading and studying out of chapters 24 and 25 tonight. I'm looking forward to these chapters just because there's always so much to dive into and glean from Abba's word. And these chapters are no different. So, with that being said, we can get right into it. Let me go to the scriptures here. And Sylvie, you can read from verses 1 through 14 to start.
Wait, am I reading or Liz is reading?
Or Liz, I'm sorry, Liz, yeah.
Okay, I'm like, wait, did I hear that wrong backwards?
I got
Okay,
confused. My bad.
that's cool. No worries.
Thank you.
It's okay. It gives me time to find it in my Bible. It's easier for me to read from here. Give
Okay.
me 1 second.
So yeah, verses 1 through 14 when you find it.
Got it. Okay. Again, in the ninth year, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, the word of the Adon came to me, saying, Son of man, write down the name of the day, this very day. The king of Babylon started his siege against Jerusalem this very day, and utter a parable to the rebellious house, and say to them, Thus says the Adon Allahim, Put on a pot, set it on, and also pour water into it. Gather pieces of meat in it, every good piece, the thigh and the shoulder. Fill it with choice cuts. Take the choice of the flock, also pile few bones under it. Make it boil well, and let the cuts simmer in it. Therefore, thus says the Adon Allahim, Woe to the bloody city, to the pot whose scum is in it, and whose scum is not gone from it. Bring it out piece by piece, on which no lot has fallen, for her blood is in her midst. She set it on top of a rock. She did not pour it on the ground to cover it with dust, that it may raise up fury and take vengeance. I have set her blood on top of a rock, that it may not be covered. I'm sorry, hold on. Therefore, thus says the Adon Allahim, Woe to the bloody city! I too will make the pyre great. Heap on the wood, kindle the fire, cook the meat well, mix in the spices, and let the cuts be burned up. Then set the pot empty on the coals, that it may become hot and its bronze may burn, that its filthiness may be melted in it, that its scum may be consumed. She has grown weary with lies, and her great scum has not gone from her. Let her scum be in the fire. In your filthiness is lewdness, because I have cleansed you, and you are not cleansed. You will not be cleansed of your filthiness any more, till I have caused my fury to rest upon you. 14, right?
Yes.
I, the Adon, have spoken it. It shall come to pass, and I will do it. I will not hold back, nor will I spare, nor will I relent. According to your ways and according to your deeds, they will judge you, says the Adon Allahim.
All right. Thank you for that. So right off bat in this chapter, well, before we get started, those of you who are joining for the first time tonight, um, we usually read through portion by portion of the chapters, and then we make the connections in the scriptures. But I invite any questions, any comments, any scriptures that you may have to make connections as well. We love to have a good discussion, so feel free to chime in if you have anything to share based on what is being shared here, okay? So again, with that being said, right off the bat in this chapter, we are going into another parable. So we know, of course, that Ezekiel was instructed to speak things that only certain people would understand, in the same way that Messiah said or in the same way that Messiah spoke to his disciples regarding the parables that he preached on. So we have just a few connections with the first couple verses, and then I'm going to show a slide. So with verse 2, we have this here where the Most High is instructing Ezekiel to write down the particular day and time, because this was the initiation of the siege on Jerusalem by Babylon, the day that he began to prophesy on this. So we have a connection in Isaiah 30, verses 8 and 9, and then Habakkuk 2, 2 to 3. So Isaiah 38 and 9 says, now go write it before them on a tablet and note it on a scroll, that it may be for a time to come, forever and ever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children who will not hear the law of the Most High. And Habakkuk 2 says, then the Adon answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. And if you've read the book of Habakkuk in context, you know that this particular chapter is not talking about writing the vision for prosperity that you want and all of those things that people in churchianity, so to speak, use. This Habakkuk was appealing to the Most High about his judgment on the Israelites, on the people who were out of covenant and speaking against them. So, oh, and Liz said this is also the fast of the 10th month in Zechariah 8:18. That's when that that fast was proclaimed for. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. Starting a little bit earlier tonight, the children are still not settled down, but we're gonna get through this. All right, so we mentioned the fast. So yes, there's a few fasts that are mentioned throughout scriptures that were community fasts. We're not commanded to observe these fasts or do these fasts, but they were fasts that the Israelites did during different moments in time. So Zechariah 8:18 was one of those. When the siege was initiated on Jerusalem, they did a community fast to appeal to the Most High. So I also have for verse 3, again, as I mentioned about the parables, just the first portion here, we have Ezekiel 2:6, and it says, and you, son of man, do not be afraid of them, nor be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns are with you, and you dwell among scorpions. Do not be afraid of their words or dismayed by their looks, though they are a rebellious house. And this is how the Most High was, I guess, giving Ezekiel strength to speak what he was telling him to speak. Because of course the words that Ezekiel was going to be sharing with the people were not happy words. Words of, if you want to say it this way, condemnation, for the consequence of what their actions were going to provide. And then also Luke 8:10, and it says, and he said, to you it has been given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of the Most High, but to the rest it is given in parables, that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. So that's once again just a reference to what I was mentioning. We also have Acts 7:51. You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do you. So here in Acts, this is just a reference back to how the Israelites would hear warnings and they wouldn't heed to those warnings. So now I am going to show a few visuals. I have a few visuals tonight, which is always good. Helps us see things more clearly. So this is the parable of the boiling pot, which once again starts out as, I see you, Sylvie. Woe to the bloody city. So Jerusalem in this parable is the cooking pot. So I'm sure, as we were reading, as Liz was reading these scriptures, yes, it is in Jeremiah as well. As we were reading, as Liz was reading these verses, I'm sure, if you haven't read this before, you're probably like, okay, so why are they talking about the meat and this and that? So Jerusalem is that cooking pot. And the scum that is being referred to, I believe it's in verse 6 and verse 9, is the filthiness, her abominations, Jerusalem's abominations, her lewdness, that are still within her. And she's not yet been punished or restrained or cast out by the execution of just and good law. So she has not been held by the measure of the law just yet. But the citizens have, with obstinacy, impenitence, and with impudence, continued in them. So all those big words to say they are continuing to be a rebellious people no matter what. So they are being thrown into a pot and cooked and burned and to be consumed. So there's one of the precepts. Look at my Bible just to go back, to not have to switch back and forth. I have a different translation, but the portion that says, I too will make the pyre great. The fire under the cooking pot is now described as a pyre, a burning for the dead. So the fire will be huge. The contents of the pot will first be burned up. Then the pot itself will become hot and its bronze may burn. All of Jerusalem's impurities, her scum, will be consumed in the judgment coming upon her. So that's just a quick visual I wanted to give in that. And I don't think, yeah, this is for the next part. So I shouldn't have done that. Hold on one second. I know I had this earlier. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to the connecting precepts here. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise a hand or share it in the chat or unmute yourself. All right, so with verses 4 through 8, which are referring to the first portion of, throwing of all the meats and all of that stuff in the blood. And he's saying, the Most High is saying that I may raise up fury and take vengeance. I have set her blood on top of a rock that it may not be covered. So I know that Liz got into this a bit last week. We're going to cover it again because as we always say, that repetition is key. And if things and themes are repeated in the scriptures, it's because they have high significance. So first off, we have Micah 3:2-3. And it says, you who hate good and love evil, who strip the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people, flay their skin from them, break their bones, and chop them up in pieces like meat for the pot, like flesh for the cauldron. So this is a great connection with this particular passage because, I mean, you can see the similarities here. And we know that the prophets all, they spoke around the same things. The Most High gave them similar visions because he wanted those things to be reiterated to the people so that they would get it, so that they would understand and know that he wasn't playing. So that's the first connection here. And like Yasmin mentioned, Jeremiah is, we have a few Jeremiah precepts that talk about the same pot vision. So first off is Jeremiah 1, and I see that you had mentioned verse 13, Yasmin. We're going to read 13 through 19. So it says, and the word of the Most High came to me the second time, saying, what do you see? And I said, I see a boiling pot, and it is facing away from the north. Then the Most High said to me, out of the north calamity shall break forth on all the inhabitants of the land. For behold, I am calling all families of the kingdoms of the north, says the Most High. They shall come, and each one set his throne at the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem, against all its walls all around, and against all the cities of Judah. I will utter my judgments against them concerning all their wickedness, because they have forsaken me, burned incense to other gods, and worshipped the works of their own hands. Therefore, prepare yourself and arise and speak to them all that I command you. Do not be dismayed before their faces, lest I dismay you before them. For behold, I have made you this day a fortified city and an iron pillar, and bronze walls against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, against its princes, against its priests, and against the people of the land. They will fight against you, but they shall not prevail against you, for I am with you, says the Adon, to deliver you. So we see here, of course, Jeremiah is being commissioned in this chapter to speak. Verse 5, we all know, well, hopefully you all know this one, that the Most High tells him, before you were born, I knew you. I called you to be a prophet to the nation. I'm paraphrasing it, something along those lines. But he was edifying him before sending him out to speak those things, those harsh words that he would be speaking to the people. We also have Jeremiah 52:24-27. And it says, the captain of the guard took Sariah, the chief priest, Zephaniah, the second priest, and the 3 doorkeepers. He also took out of the city an officer who had charge of the men of war, 7 men of the king's closest associates who were found in the city, the principal scribe of the army who mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the midst of the city. And Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took these and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. Then the king of Babylon struck them and put them to death at Riblah in the hand of Hamath. Thus Judah was carried away captive from its own land. So this was the initiation, or a part of Babylon attacking Jerusalem at that point. Then I also have Revelation 19:20. And this one says, then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These 2 were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So I included this precept because of the similarity, as far as, because of the false prophets and what they were doing. They were thrown into the lake of fire. Very similar here, a boiling pot. And I believe hold on. There was one that I felt connected more succinctly, which I believe is verse 8 here. That I may raise up fury and take vengeance. I have set her blood on top of a rock that it may not be covered. But also verse 7, for her blood is in her midst. She is set on top of a rock. She did not pour it on the ground to cover it with dust. So all of that to say, what the Israelites experienced, or what their calamity and consequence was, is the same thing that those who receive the mark of the beast in the last days, unfortunately, will also experience for not repenting and not coming back into covenant with the Father. Micah 7:2 is also another connection here in this portion. Let me just make sure. Okay, yeah. The faithful man has perished from the earth, and there is no one upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. Every man hunts his brother with a net. So this is just speaking to, again, the works of the flesh and the type of lives that they were living in that time. We also have Obadiah 1:11, and we're going to get into Obadiah in the next chapter as well, as this is more so a prophecy against Edom. Yes, exactly, same today. So verse 11 of chapter 1 says, in the day that you stood on the other side, in the day that strangers carried captive forces, when foreigners entered his gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, even you were as one of them. So again, this is the book of Obadiah is a prophecy against Edom, but we know also that there was a melting pot, if you can, if you will, of nations in Jerusalem at that time as well. So there is very possible that there were Edomites there dwelling in that land in Judah. So now going into verses 7 and 8. So as I acknowledged, Liz went into that about the covering the blood, as that is something that was part of the law in Torah. But we're gonna repeat it again. So Leviticus 17:11 through 14 says, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any stranger who dwells among you eat blood. Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. So here is, of course, the instruction that the Israelites received in those days. For it is the life of all flesh. Its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. So that's the first connection here, but there's a few more. We have Isaiah 26:21 that says, for behold, the Most High comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will also disclose her blood and will no more cover her slain. Then also Deuteronomy 12:16, and it says, only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it on the earth like water. And I believe verse 17 probably repeats what it says here in verse 13 about covering the blood with dust. And then we know, of course, that in Genesis, in the beginning, after Cain slew Abel, this is what the Most High, what the Father said to Cain. And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So we know that, of course, this was the first death that took place in the scriptures, or the first, the first shedding of blood that took place in the scriptures. And it was something that was unpleasing to the Father, and that was how Cain was cursed because of this act that he committed. And Genesis 9:4 says, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. So now we can also see here, as we know, the written law was not given until Exodus, but we already can see that there were instructions being given even in Genesis. So the law, as we've spoken before, started out spiritual, then it became physical, and with Messiah, it returned to spiritual, which is why we are now under the spirit of the law through our Melchizedek priesthood, the better covenant or the new covenant. That's how it is referred to. And then let me see, what else do I have here? We have also Isaiah 5:7 that says, for the vineyard of the Most High of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant plant. Look for justice, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. So this is also just going back now to their iniquity and why they are being judged. 2 Kings 24:3, it says, surely at the commandment of the Most High, this came upon Judah to remove them from his sight because of the sins of Manasseh, according to all he had done. So this right here is a historical reference, making connection to Ezekiel's prophecy and what ended up happening in the time of 2 Kings, in the time of Manasseh's reign. And then 2 Samuel 8:2, it says, then he defeated Moab, forcing them down to the ground. He measured them off with a line. With 2 lines, he measured off those to be put to death, and with 1 full line, those to be kept alive. So the Moabites became David's servants and brought tribute. Actually, I think I might have put that in the wrong place. Yeah, that 2 Samuel precept doesn't belong there. So we'll go back to that later. Numbers 35:33. Again, like I said, I had a lot of connections here with the blood portion. So these again are for 7 and 8. So it says, so you shall not pollute the land where you are, for blood defiles the land, and no atonement can be made for the land, for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. And then after Messiah, we have Hebrews 12:24. To Yasha, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. So again, we see here that once Messiah shed his blood for us, there was a change. You know, the blood was now the cleansing of the people. The shed blood of the Messiah was the cleansing of the people. He died for us to be cleansed. 1 Corinthians 4:15 says, for though you might have 10,000 instructors in Christ, yet you do not have many fathers. For in Yasha Messiah, I have been begotten you through the gospel. And Revelation 18:5-10. Let me see how that one connects here. For her sins have reached to heaven, and the Most High has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen and am no widow and will not see sorrow. Therefore, her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Most High Elohim who judges her. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxurious with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. So we know, of course, that the Apostle John had this vision, obviously years after the exile had taken place, right? The exile, the return, then Messiah, his life, all of the things that took place. So this sounds very similar to the judgment that was coming on Jerusalem in that time. But if we fast forward the tape to today, this is exactly the same thing that is happening or will be happening in the last days. And it's judgment. It's judgment on those who are refusing to recognize the error of their ways, refusing to recognize their sin, and refusing to repent and live a just life for the Most High. All right, so now, like I said, this whole portion is pretty fluid because the Most High is, first, we had the vision of the pot, right? And now he is prophesying against the people or speaking about them again, reiterating the fire that is going to cook the meat and burn them up. So we have another precept here from Habakkuk with verse 9. Habakkuk 2:12 says, "Woe to him who builds a town with bloodshed, who establishes a city by iniquity." And then Revelation 16:19, also with verse 9, says, "Now the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon was remembered before the Elohim to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath." So very similar to chapter 18 of Revelations, but just another connection here. Then we have with verse 10, Jeremiah 17:3, and it says, Sylvie was asking, so this fire was not to refine them. No, it was not. So as we've discussed before, fire can mean two things. It can mean destruction or judgment, and it can mean purification. So in this instance, it was fire of judgment. Like like the lake of fire, basically. All right, so does that answer your question? You're welcome. So verse 10, as I said, connecting to Jeremiah 17:3. "O my mountain in the field, I will give as plunder your wealth, all your treasures and your high places of sin with all your borders." And as we know here, it's just speaking about heap on the wood, kindle the fire, cook the meat well, mix in the spices and let the cuts be burned up. So I think, Sylvie, you mean because verse 13, I had connected it with possible refinement. Verse 13? Oh, well,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I was saying, like, remember last week, how when we read it, it says, "In your filthiness is lewdness, because I have cleansed you, and you were not cleansed. You will not be cleansed of your filthiness anymore." And then that word there, "till I have caused my fury to rest upon you." So I think that's where maybe Sylvie was getting confused, because I went in with that one last week.
Okay. Yeah, it's just the entirety of this, the top portions is just about the fire of judgment, basically. So in his attempt, yes, and I'll get to that. I think I have maybe some connecting precepts here. Yeah, I do. So well, let's just keep going and see how it develops. But thank you for clarifying that, Liz. All right, so verse 11, Jeremiah 21:10. It says, "For I have set my face against this city for adversity and not for good, says the Most High. It shall be given into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire." So again, we see always lots of connections between Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel. And they all spoke about that fire of judgment, although they also did speak about fire of purification. So then we have First Corinthians 3:12-13, and it says, "Now if anyone," let me make sure. Yeah, this is with verse 11. "Now if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become clear, for the day will declare it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test each one's work of what sort it is." So here now we also see there is this is the fire, I believe, also of purification. So yes, of refinement. We can easily make like the connection that, let's say, for example, you go into a fire, right? Um, in a spiritual sense, going into a fire for purification, but you don't lean into it or surrender those things that the Most High is trying to remove from you, all of those impurities. You're not allowing the dross to rise up, to come up to the surface. So what ends up happening, you're going to be consumed by that fire. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know, just thinking about it, like there's a thin line when you go into that fire. Exactly. He had cleansed you and you were not cleansed, as it says it in verse 13. He attempted to refine them, but because of their continued iniquity, their continued rebellion and lewdness, they were not refined. So instead, he is now saying, I am going to consume you. So I hope that makes sense. Again, there's just proves once again, there's a very thin line in that. So we have to be very careful too when we're asking Abba to remove these things from our lives, to show us those dark areas in our lives. It has to be with a willingness to surrender those things to him. We also have Nahum 3, verse 1 and verse 10. And it says, woe to the bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. Its victim never departs. And then verse 10, yet she was carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children also were dashed to pieces at the head of every street. They cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. And I believe this is also in reference to the first, because as we've studied throughout these chapters, the exile took place in portions. First, the best were taken, like the princes and the prophets and the priests were taken. Then another portion of the people were taken, and then the third and the last portion was taken. So this is what that's referring to here. With verse 12, I have Daniel 9, 13 through 14. So let's go back. Verse 12, she has grown weary with lies, and her great scum has not gone from her. Let her scum be in the fire. And as we read in the slides, speaking about whose scum is in it, the filthiness and the abominations and all her lewdness, right? So once again, let's go back. No. Daniel 9, 13 through 14. It says, as it is written in the law of Moses, all this disaster has come upon us, yet we have not made our prayers before the Most High, our Elohim, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand your truth. Therefore, the Most High has kept the disaster in mind and brought it upon us. For the Most High, our Elohim, is righteous in all the works which he does, though we have not obeyed his voice. And another connection here in Genesis 6 and then Deuteronomy 28. Also, once again, connecting this with the filthiness, the lewdness, the rebellion. Genesis 6, 5 through 7. Then the Most High saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Most High was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Most High said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Now, of course, we know that after the flood, we know the promise that the Most High gave, that he would not flood the earth again. But history repeats itself in the sense of the people knew this history. They knew what had taken place for the wickedness of man back in the times of Genesis, yet they went back to that idol worship, the sacrifices that they were making to the other gods, all of those things. So of course, the Most High decided he needed to clean house once again. And we see it in Deuteronomy 28:15. It says, but it shall come to pass if you do not obey the voice of the Most High, your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. So, you all know Deuteronomy 28 is a very long chapter. And the first 14 verses speak on the blessings that you receive for obedience. And then verses 15 through, I believe I want to say 68, if I'm not mistaken, are all of the curses for disobedience. So this is just the first verse initiating what would take place for the disobedience of the people. All right, verse 13 says, in your filthiness and lewdness, because I have cleansed you and you are not cleansed. So we've talked about this one already. So let's read a few connections here. Ezekiel 5:11 through 13 says, therefore, as I live, says the Most High Elohim, surely because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your detestable things and with all your abominations, therefore I will also diminish you. My eye will not spare, nor will I have any pity. 1/3 of you shall die of pestilence and be consumed with famine in your midst. 1/3 shall fall by the sword all around you. And I will scatter another third to all the winds, and I will draw out a sword after them. Thus shall my anger be spent, and I will cause my fury to rest upon them, and I will be avenged. And they shall know that I, the Adon, have spoken it in my zeal, when I have spent my fury upon them. Yes, the 1/3 once again. And interestingly, as usual, we see that a 1/3 was scattered. And as we know in Zechariah, it talks about the 1/3 that will go through the fire and be refined. So another great connection there. We have also Jeremiah 6:28 through 30. And it says, they are all stubborn rebels, walking as slanderers. They are bronze and iron. They are all corrupters. The bellows blow fiercely. The lead is consumed by the fire. The smelter refines in vain, for the wicked are not drawn off. People will call them rejected silver because the Most High has rejected them. So here again, another metaphor about the fire and the refinement. Seems like this right here, the smelter refines in vain, for the wicked are not drawn off. It looks like even, let's say, a group being put under the fire together to separate the wheat from the tare, so to speak. So in this case, the refinement wasn't taking place because the wicked remained. 2 Corinthians 7:1 says, therefore, having these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all the filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of the Most High. And we know that the fear of the Most High is the beginning of wisdom, right? And always the key verse in Ecclesiastes, that this is the end of the matter is this, to fear him and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of mankind, right? So just another connection, and speaking also to what Liz was saying about the refinement. We are being instructed in the last days to be refined, to give in to that purification and sanctification process that the Most High is always trying to take us through. And it's all for his glory, for the sake of his name, for him to be glorified. Revelations 22:11 says, he who is unjust, let him be unjust still. He who is filthy, let him be filthy still. He who is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy still. So we know, obviously, this is speaking about the separation. Once again, those who are choosing to walk with him and those who are choosing to be disobedient despite hearing the word of the Most High, hearing that Messiah is coming back soon. Matthew 23, 37 through 38 says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. I feel like, and I'm sure that many of you can agree, Messiah is speaking about those times, back then before, where he was present. He was witnessing all of that iniquity and seeing everything that was taking place and being the angel of the Adon that was coming and speaking to and giving the words to the prophets, who were speaking to the people during those times. All right, and now the last few connections for verse 14. We have 1 Samuel 15:29, and it says, well, let's go back and look at verse 14 again. It says, I, the Adon, have spoken it. It shall come to pass, and I will do it. I will not hold back, nor will I spare, nor will I relent. According to your ways and according to your deeds, they will judge you, says the Most High Elohim. 1 Samuel 15:29, and it says, and also the strength of Israel will not lie nor relent, for he is not a man that he should relent. So obviously meaning to say that if the Most High says he's going to do it, he will do it. Romans 2:5 through 6 says, but in accordance with your hardness and your impenitent heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of the Most High, who will render to each one according to his deeds. So that's the main connection here. And according to their deeds, they will be rendered what is due to them. And then, yes, I have two more. Psalm 33:9 says, for he spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. And then Numbers 23:19, the Most High is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good? So just again, wanted to bring in some connections there about his, oh my gosh, what is the word that I am looking for? His integrity, his nature. Just as much as he promises good things to his children, to those who love him, that walk according to his purpose, there are also promises that he makes when he is going to exercise judgment. It can't be prevented if it's due. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, we can continue. Liz, you can just read through the rest of the chapter, and this is a very sad portion here.
Yes. Also the word of the Adon came to me, saying, Son of man, behold, I take away from you the desire of your eyes with one stroke. Yet you shall neither mourn nor weep, nor shall your tears run down. Sigh in silence, make no mourning for the dead, bind your turban on your head, and put your sandals on your feet. Do not cover your lips, and do not eat man's bread of sorrow. So I spoke to the people in the morning, and at evening my wife died. And the next morning I did as I was commanded. And the people said to me, will you not tell us what these things signify to us, that you behave so? Then I answered them, the word of the Adon came to me, saying, speak to the house of Israel. Thus says the Adon Elohim, behold, I will profane my sanctuary, your arrogant boast, the desire of your eyes, the delight of your soul, and your sons and daughters whom you left behind shall fall by the sword. And you shall do as I have done. You shall not cover your lips, nor eat man's bread of sorrow. Your turbans shall be on your heads, and your sandals on your feet. You shall neither mourn nor weep, but you shall pine away in your iniquities, and mourn with one another. Thus Ezekiel is a sign to you. According to all that he has done, you shall do. And when this comes, you shall know that I am the Adon Elohim. And you, son of man, will it not be in the day when I take from them their stronghold, their joy and their glory, the desire of their eyes, and that on which they set their minds, their sons and their daughters, that on that day one who escapes will come to you and let you hear it with your ears? On that day your mouth will be opened to him who has escaped. You shall speak and no longer be mute. Thus you shall be a sign to them, and they shall know that I am Haya, the Adon.
Amen. Amen. So again, like I said, this is a very sad portion because as it begins here, the Most High is telling Ezekiel, before it even happens, I take away from you the desire of your eyes with one stroke. So in an instant, he took the life of Ezekiel's wife and instructs him to sigh in silence and make no mourning for the dead. So in that time, obviously, and even now, it was common practice, and it is common practice that when you mourn, you weep, right? You weep, you wail. It's like I've been there before, mourning for the death of a loved one. It brings out this like this almost tangible feeling of pain that you cry out with like a groan, and especially when it's your spouse. I could totally relate and imagine how Ezekiel felt, that he couldn't say anything. All he could do was just sigh. That's all the Most High allowed him to do. And Liz is saying the meekness and the obedient heart of Ezekiel. Yes. And she also said makes you feel like your heart is out of your hands and your stomach is, yes, basically gone. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great description there, because it's a physically painful grief. So Ezekiel is being told that he can't experience that grief for the loss of his wife. And it makes you wonder why would the Most High instruct him in this way? So let's look at another visual here. Let me go back to the presentation. So I couldn't really find, I mean, like if you look on the internet, there's like a few, I guess drawings or interpretations of what it might have looked like. This is an interpretation of Ezekiel basically continuing his assignment in spite of what was happening, what the personal situation that he was experiencing, but being convicted to continue to speak and be that mouthpiece for the Most High. So the Most High to Ezekiel says, do not mourn when your wife dies. I will take away the delight of your eyes. So how does he feel about judging Judah like Ezekiel feels about the Most High taking away his wife? So the point is, as a husband finds a proper source of joy, confidence, and security in his relationship with his wife, so Israel had an improper source of confidence and security in the temple, which he refers to it as your arrogant boast in this portion. So as Ezekiel's wife suddenly died, so the sanctuary would suddenly and soon perish. So both in exile and in the land in Ezekiel's day, the people of Israel had an irrational and dangerous confidence in the mere existence of the temple. They took it lightly. So they thought to themselves, this is the Most High's house, and it is dear to him and to us. He will never allow it to be conquered. And the Most High shattered this mistaken confidence. So they probably, just as today, believed that they were operating under grace, that they had time to repent, that they had time to get it together and get their lives right with the Father. However, he had a timeline as well that he was looking at, where he just didn't want them. He was over it. He was over the iniquity and he was over the rebellion. So that's the point that they had gotten to. And like Liz said, yes, basically carrying on with life as if nothing ever happened. And that's hard. Yes, it's again, like I said, I can definitely relate to this. I'm grateful that I had my time of mourning, but I can only imagine being a prophet and having the presence of the Most High with you would probably also give you that strength to continue, knowing that there's a recompense, or there's, you're fulfilling the assignment on his behalf and for his glory. So let's go into some connections here with this portion. We have first Jeremiah 16, Jeremiah 16:15 and Jeremiah 22:10 and Jeremiah 9:1. Again, a lot of connections with Jeremiah as usual. So verse 15 of chapter 16 says, But the Most High lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them, for I will bring them back into their land, which I gave to their fathers. And this is connecting to verse 16. Basically, once again, I will take away from you the desire of your eyes in one stroke. Instantly that it would happen, but that he will bring them back into the land which he gave to their fathers. Chapter 22, verse 10 says, Weep not for the dead, nor bemoan him. Weep bitterly for him who goes away, for he shall return no more, nor see his native country. So this is another connection here, connecting where the Most High was telling Jeremiah not to weep for the dead either. But obviously we know, for Ezekiel, it was a little bit more personal. Jeremiah 9:1, it says, Oh, that my head were waters and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of the daughter of my people. And this is the opposite. So we know that Jeremiah was known as the weeping prophet. He was constantly lamenting the downfall of Israel. And so he was constantly moaning and groaning and crying and lamenting their iniquity. So this is just an opposite of what Ezekiel was being instructed to do. Then we have also Leviticus 10:2-3. And it says, So fire went out from the Adon and devoured them, and they died before the Adon. And Moses said to Aaron, This is what the Most High spoke, saying, By those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people, I must be glorified. So Aaron held his peace. And let me read verse 6 as well. And it says, And Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Ithamar his sons, Do not uncover your heads nor tear your clothes, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the people. But let your brethren, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning which the Most High has kindled. And if you recall in the beginning of these portions, I had made a reference to the different timelines that we were kind of studying. And I know that I haven't mentioned that again the last few studies, but it's simply because I just feel like going through this in a fluid motion in the chronological way that we're doing, it really just doesn't make sense to worry about the timeline of things, because it's so spiritual that it doesn't. But in the beginning, I mentioned how Ezekiel at 30 years old began this ministry and was commissioned as a prophet. Well, at 30 years old, we know also was when the priests would begin their priestly duties. So this connection here was from when Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, were killed they were devoured by the Most High for giving that offering of strange fire, and Aaron was not permitted to mourn either. So just another connection here, as Ezekiel was also known as a priest. That may be another reason why he was instructed so by the Most High not to mourn the death of his wife. It's like the work isn't done, you have to continue. And then Leviticus 21:10, another connection here in the same vein, says, "He who is the high priest among his brethren, on whose head the anointing oil was poured, and who is consecrated to wear the garments, shall not uncover his head, nor tear his clothes." So, like we see here, and also, so yes, he was a prophet, he was a priest, but he's being told not to take off his turban, right? And part of the priestly garments was wearing a turban. So we know that this is a confirmation here that he was a priest. All right, and now also Jeremiah 16:4-7 says, they shall die gruesome deaths. They shall not be lamented, nor shall they be buried, but they shall be like refuse on the face of the earth. They shall be consumed by the sword and by famine, and their corpses shall be meat for the birds of heaven and for the beasts of the earth. For thus says the Most High, do not enter the house of mourning, nor go to lament or bemoan them. For I have taken away my peace from this people, says the Adon. Loving kindness and mercies, both the great and the small shall die in this land. They shall not be buried. Neither shall men lament for them, cut themselves, nor make themselves bald for them. Nor shall men break bread in mourning for them, to comfort them for the dead. Nor shall men give them the cup of consolation to drink for their father or their mother. So this is making reference, and I should have gone back to Torah to address what is being spoken of here. But basically, these are different things that when they were mourning, when the people were in mourning, they would shave their heads, like David did. He shaved his head, he shaved his beard when his no, was that David? I don't want to give the wrong information, but there are various men in the Bible who, when they were in mourning, yes, Job, thank you, shaved their beard, shaved their head when they were in mourning. They mourned in dust and in ashes, wore sackcloth. These were the different garments that they would wear, or they would take off their garments basically in order to mourn. And then once they were done with their mourning, they would take a bath, they would have a meal, and they would continue on with their lives. Okay. And this, by the way, was connecting to verse 17. If I didn't mention that already, forgive me if I did. So we also have Psalm 46:10. It says, "Be still and know that I am the Most High. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." And this is just another connection to this portion with the Most High being who he is and doing what he says he's going to do. And then in Leviticus 13:45, we have what the leper would do. And we know that leprosy is a connection to sin. So it says, "Now the leper on whom the sore is, his clothes shall be torn and his head bare, and he shall cover his mustache and cry, unclean, unclean." So this was another form of mourning in Torah. Psalm 51:3 says, "For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me." Or always before me. I think another translation says ever before me. But this is another connection to verse 17. And not to say, of course, that Ezekiel was in sin, but if you've read Psalm 51, you know that this is one of those Psalms about, well, it was when David was in mourning after he was called out by the prophet Nathan about what he did with Bathsheba. And I'm not sure if it was, I believe it was when he found out that his son would lose his life. for that sin. If not, when his son's life had already been taken. Now we also have verse 18, a connection with verse 18, 1 Corinthians 7, 29 through 30. So right after his wife passed, no, I'm sorry. So the timeline. He hears in the evening that his wife is going to die. The next day he goes and he prophesies to the people, and that evening his wife dies. The next morning he continues on his mission. He continues to do what the Most High has called him to do. Okay, so 1 Corinthians 7, 29 through 30. But this I say, brethren, the time is short, so that from now on, even those who have wives should be as though they had none, those who weep as though they did not weep, those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice, those who buy as though they did not possess. So, of course, this is a reference to after all of these things had passed, years after. So we can make a connection to this day and age, where when we see the coming wrath, when we see the coming judgment, not to say that the death of our loved ones won't matter, but at the same time, we're going to have to continue to focus on working out our soul salvation with fear and trembling, knowing that he's coming for a cleansed bride, and that's what we need to endeavor to be. All right, and then going into verse 19, that says, and the people said to me, will you not tell us these things, signify to us that you behave so? So obviously the people see or know that Ezekiel's wife has passed away. They don't see him in mourning, so they're wondering, like, what's going on? Let us know what did the Most High say to you to convey to us? Because obviously, you're not moved by the death of your wife as you should be. So Malachi 3, 7 to 8 says, Yet from the days of your fathers you have gone away from my ordinances and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Adon of hosts. But you said, in what way shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. And obviously, Liz did a study on this. We know that this particular passage is not what it has been proclaimed to be over the ages. Yes, they knew by now everything Ezekiel did was a sign for them. Absolutely. Ezekiel was one of those prophets that was really good at doing demonstrations. So yeah, even the death of his wife became a physical demonstration to them. But yeah, we know that this particular passage here is not about the physical tithes and offerings that the churches of today use it for. It's basically about the offering, the spiritual sacrifice of our lives being lived out for him. And so that's what Ezekiel was getting ready to convey to the people, that they were in sin because they were going after other gods, and they were giving those sacrifices to other gods and taking lightly the temple that they had right in front of them. And the presence of the Most High, that I believe was probably very tangible and probably more accessible in those times as well. We also have Jeremiah 7:14. And now we're going into connections with verses 20 through 24. And these are the words that Ezekiel spoke to the people. So let's starting out with verse 21. Well, verse 20, the word of the Most High came to me, saying, speak to the house of Israel, thus says the Most High, your Elohim, behold, I will profane my sanctuary, your arrogant boast. So as I mentioned earlier, It was the physical temple, the physical sanctuary had become, even that had become an idol to them. It's almost like even though he had allowed the temple to be built, he still wanted that spiritual connection with the people, where they wouldn't be looking to a physical place to encounter him. They wanted that, he wanted that to be a constant, perpetual type of connection, where we are today, in the same way that we are today. So we have Jeremiah 7:14 that says, therefore I will do to the house which is called by my name, in which you trust, and to this place which I gave to you and your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. And I know that we also spoke about this last week. The Ark of the Covenant originally dwelt in Shiloh, near Samaria, when the Israelites first entered into the promised land, before the kingdom split into two. And then once that took place, the Ark of the Covenant was taken to the city of David, to Jerusalem, and the temple was built there, the physical temple. We also have Lamentations 2:7. Let me just make sure. Yeah. Lamentations 2:7. So the Most High has spurned his altar. He has abandoned his sanctuary. He has given up the walls of her palaces into the hand of the enemy. They have made a noise in the house of the Adon as on the day of a set feast. And then Psalm 74:7. They have set fire to your sanctuary. They have defiled the dwelling place of your name to the ground. And this is referring to once Babylon came in and they took all of the gold, all of the silver, all of the precious things out of the temple, and they set it on fire, which was, within that same time frame or years. And Psalm 78, we actually read this on Shabbat this week, and it was just beautiful connections here. It's a great summary chapter. I recommend anybody to read this chapter when you are able to. It gives you a really good, like in Acts, in the book of Acts, just like a summary of everything that took place with the Israelites. So I have verses 60 through 64, and it says, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent he had placed among men, and delivered his strength into captivity, and his glory into the enemy's hand. He also gave his people over to the sword, and was furious with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given in marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then Leviticus 26:39, and it says, and those of you who are left shall waste away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands. Also their fathers' iniquities which are with them, they shall waste away. So, it just blows my mind, and I think about it constantly, like how Abba, this was something I was praying about this morning, actually, how Abba just, it's just crazy how he brought us onto this earth to worship him. That was his original intent. That's what he always wanted. And from the beginning, there has been this attack on our worship towards him. And even in knowing that would take place, he still allowed us to live. He still, even after the flood, allowed us to be fruitful and multiply and settle in the promised land and continue to forsake him. I think I can't remember where it was that we were talking about this. I think maybe it was last week too, how literally there were other idols being built and placed in his literal temple, yet he still loved his people. Like, it's crazy to me how This has gone on over and over and over again. And then he still decided to send his son down to show us how we should be living, to come down in the flesh, show us how we should be living, and many still don't get it. Many still choose to turn their backs on him. So it's just it hits different when you have that revelation, knowing how merciful and how loving and how kind our Heavenly Father truly is. He is not that mean God that everybody always wants to portray him as. He had his boiling point. And that shows you his emotion, that shows you his nature. Michelle said, it makes sense. Oh, sorry, I lost this. It makes sense considering Lucifer was the angel of worship and music, that our way of worshiping would be attacked first. Yes, absolutely. That is so true. And Yasmin said, when you love Papa so much, it bothers you when people disregard his heart. Yep. And Sylvie said, he wants all of us, but not all of us want him. So true. And Liz, I don't blame him though. Just read through Judges and Kings. Yes. All of that. Thank you all so much for your input because it's so true. It is so true. Abba is just running after us and so many people run away. Okay, so then now we have John 14:29, John 16:4, and then Luke 11:29 through 30. And it says, and now I have told you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe. But these things I have told you, that when the time comes, you may remember that I told you of them. And these things I did not say to you at the beginning, because I was with you. And then Luke 11:29 through 30 says, and while the crowds were thickly gathered together, he began to say, this is an evil generation. It seeks a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. For as Jonah became a sign to the Ninevites, so also the Son of Man will be to this generation. So again, we see over and over again, Abba attempted so mercifully to give us signs, to give us examples of what would take place, what could potentially take place if we continued in our iniquity. All right, so then also we have Psalm 48:2, and now this is for verses 25 through 27. So it says, beautiful in elevation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. So let's go back over here. And this is again speaking of, will it not be in the day when I take from them their stronghold, their joy and their glory, the desire of their eyes? So this is, speaking about that. And we know also this could be twofold in the sense of New Jerusalem, right? But in this portion, we're referring it to also how it says in Psalm 52, out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, the Most High will shine forth. So this is our blessed hope that although there will be no physical temple, we do have New Jerusalem that is coming down to dwell in. There's no physical temple now, right? Because it was desecrated, it was gone. It became an idol. We can see that here. Having even now, if we had a physical temple to go and worship in, I'm sure that there would be a lot of people like it is in existence now, that believe that the only way that you can enter into the presence of the Most High is by being in the four walls of a temple, of a church, of a sanctuary, however you want to word it. So yeah, this is what the life that we are living looks like now. And now verse 32 of chapter 28 of Deuteronomy, As I mentioned earlier, from verses 15 and on, we see the curses. So this is one of them. Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people, and your eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all day long, and there shall be no strength in your hand. So again, just another confirmation that the Father knew that his people would fall. He knew that his people would turn away from him. And he proclaimed it even throughout the early books of the Bible, of the word. We also have Luke 21:15. It says, For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. And this is in reference to verse 27. So if you notice, the Most High is telling him, you shall speak and no longer be mute. So I'm going to read a few connections there with that too, because basically saying at the beginning, even at the beginning of the book of Ezekiel, at the beginning of his prophetic ministry, and we're going to read a few of those precepts, the Most High told him that he would be mute except when he was speaking a divine prophecy. So Ezekiel 3:26 and 27 says, I will make your tongue cling to the roof of your mouth so that you shall be mute and not be one to rebuke them, for they are a rebellious house. But when I speak with you, I will open your mouth and you shall say to them, for thus says the Adon Elohim, he who hears, let him hear, and he who refuses, let him refuse, for they are a rebellious house. And Liz said, mute equaling dumb. So in other words, wisdom will be given when they are no longer mute. Yes. Yeah, very good connection there too. We also have Ezekiel 33:21 through 22. And it says, and it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, on the 5th day of the month, that one who had escaped from Jerusalem came to me and said, the city has been captured. Now the hand of the Adon had been upon me the evening before the man came who had escaped, and he had opened my mouth. So when he came to me in the morning, my mouth was opened and I was no longer mute. So we just see another confirmation here that this was basically what was happening to Ezekiel throughout this time. He had to stay quiet and then speak, stay quiet and then speak. And Liz said, verse 27 also connects with come out of her, my people, those who have escaped, given wisdom because they came out of her. Yes, yes. Very good connection too. Thank you. I also wanted to read a chapter from Enoch. We have chapter 53 that I feel connects really well with all of the whole of chapter 24, and it's short, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And it says, there mine eyes saw a deep valley with open mouths, and all who dwell on the earth and sea and islands shall bring to him gifts and presents and tokens of homage, but that deep valley shall not become full. And their hands commit lawless deeds, and the sinners devour all whom they lawlessly oppress. Yet the sinners shall be destroyed before the face of the Adon of spirits, and they shall be banished from off the face of his earth, and they shall perish forever and ever. For I saw all the angels of punishment abiding there and preparing all the instruments of Hasatan. And I asked the angel of peace who went with me, for whom are they preparing these instruments? And he said unto me, they prepare these for the kings and the mighty of this earth, that they may thereby be destroyed. And after this, the righteous and elect one shall cause the house of his congregation to appear. Henceforth, they shall be no more hindered in the name of the Adon of spirits. And these mountains shall not stand as the earth before his righteousness, but the hills shall be as a fountain of water, and the righteous shall have rest from the oppression of sinners. So like I said, just a really good connection, really good connecting chapter to chapter 24. And Liz shared Isaiah 66, verses 19 through 21. And it says, I will set a sign among them, and those among them who escape I will send to the nations, to Tarshish and Pul and Lud, who draw the bow, and to Tubal and Javan, to the coastlands of far off, who have not heard my fame nor seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. Let me scroll down. Then they shall bring all your brethren for an offering to the Most High out of all the nations, on horses and in chariots and in litters, on mules and on camels, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says the Adon. And the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of the Adon. For I will also take some of them for priests and Levites, says the Adon, the carrying of his sign, his covenant. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. Awesome connections there. I just love his word so much. I'm so grateful that he has left us these gems, right? Abba, so good. All right, so now we are gonna go into chapter 25. And I'm trying to think if we should read through the whole chapter or break it down piece by piece. Sylvie, you're still good to read, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna do verses 1 through 10 first, since Moab and Ammon are, yeah. Yeah, so let's do 1 through 10 first, okay? Oh, is it 11? Oh, yes, through 11. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to read from what I have because my letters are a little bit bigger.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So there might be a little bit of a variation. I'm not sure.
What translation do you have?
I have the NKJV, but I
Oh,
feel like sometimes my words are different than yours.
oh, really? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe it's in my head. Okay. The word of the Most High came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against the Ammonites and prophesy against them. Say to the Ammonites, Hear the word of the Adon Elohim. Thus says the Adon Elohim, because you said, Aha, against my sanctuary when it was profane, and against the land of Israel when it was desolate, and against the house of Judah when they went into captivity. Indeed, therefore, I will deliver you as a possession to the men of the east, and they shall set their encampment among you, and make their dwellings among you. They should eat your fruit, and they should drink your milk. And I will make Rabbah a stable for the camels, and Ammon a resting place for the flock. Then you should know that I am the Adon. For thus says the Adon Elohim, because you clapped your hands, stamped your feet, and rejoiced in heart with all your disdain for the land of Israel. Indeed, therefore, I will stretch out my hand against you and give you as plunder to the nations. I will cut you off from the peoples, and I will cause you to perish from the countries. I will destroy you, and you shall know that I am the Adon. Thus says the Adon Elohim, because Moab and Seir say, Look, the house of Judah is like all the nations. Therefore, behold, I will clear the territory of Moab of cities, of their cities on its frontier, the glory of the country, Beth Jeshimoth, Baal Meon, and Kishataim. Sorry, I killed that word. To the men of the east, I will give it as a possession, together with the Ammonites, that the Ammonites may not be remembered among the nations. And I will execute judgment upon Moab, and they should know that I am the Adon.
All right. So now we are going into the prophecies against the other nations. So let me go back to the slides. All right, so here I just have the heading, the end of the road for the Most High's enemy. So we're gonna be going into the next, what these are, how many chapters? I think, let me do quick math. 6 chapters. I only broke down 2 chapters today because next week we have 3. I wanna do my best to cover 26, 26, 27, and 28 that are all about Tyre. And then we have Egypt that is lamented and prophesied against, Egypt and Lebanon, and then a lament over the Pharaoh. So when is it that you leave, Sylvie? Next week? Oh, yes, it is next week, right? Oh.
I'm like wondering if I could get Wi-Fi on the plane. Man, I'm on this long flight.
Yeah, you may be able to. Like Liz says, some people are able to. It all depends on the airline.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but yeah. Okay. So
yeah, because otherwise my FOMO.
all right, so continuing. You will be missed. But so the judgment may begin with the Most High's house, right? But those who oppose God's people will get what is coming to them too. So now we're seeing here that the nations the Most High is addressing were historically the geographical surrounding nations of Israel. So this is just a grid of, to show we have Jerusalem and Judah, but here we have Edom, Moab, Ammon, and we're also speaking about Philistia, which I believe was up here in this, like around this area here. I didn't include it in the picture. Or maybe below. I could be wrong. All right, and I just wanted to go over this again. I know that we've shown it a few times, but we're gonna be reading out of Obadiah for this portion. And as I mentioned earlier, Obadiah was one of the prophets that prophesied to Edom. And then we're also going to be reading, I believe, a bit of Amos. And Amos was a prophet over Israel. But there's also things that we're gonna see reference that make sense connecting to these scriptures, as well as Nahum. And Nahum was a prophet to Assyria, over Assyria. Okay, so who were the Ammonites and the Moabites? And this is what I was referring to as far as going into some history tonight. So Lot was Abraham's nephew. If you've read through Genesis, you recognize these names, and was the progenitor of the Ammonites. After Abraham and Lot separated in Genesis 13, you can read back on that. Lot settled in the city of Sodom. So probably thinking that they were the only people left on earth, and this is gross, and I know, Lot's daughters got him drunk and had incestuous relations with him to produce their children. We're going to read this in a minute. The older daughter had a son named Moab, which means from father. And the younger gave birth to Ben-Ami, which means son of my people. Yeah, I know. I thought of you when I was putting these slides together. Hi, D. Okay, so the sins of Ammon. What were the sins? I started like digging to really kind of get a good feel of what were the sins that the Most High hated so much about this people, to bring out these prophecies against them. So we have a few throughout Scripture. In the time of Moses, the fertile plains of the Jordan River Valley were occupied by the Amorites, the Ammonites, and the Moabites. So when Israel left Egypt, the Ammonites refused to assist them in any way, and the Most High punished them for their lack of support. So we're going to read that as well. The Ammonites were a pagan people who worshipped the gods Milcom and Molech. And you can see the god Molech is here. You see that they were sacrificing babies to this god. So the Most High commanded the Israelites not to marry these pagans because intermarriage would lead the Israelites to worship false gods. Solomon disobeyed and married Naamah the Ammonite, and we're going to read that as well. And as the Most High had warned, he was drawn into idolatry. So Moloch was a fire god with the face of a calf, and his images had arms outstretched to receive babies who were sacrificed to him. We're also going to read Amos 1:13 that says that the Ammonites would rip open pregnant women in the territories that they had conquered, which is so sad. Yes, Yasmin, Solomon. So again, who were the Ammonites and the Moabites? So now this is the Moabites. The Moabites led Israel into Baal worship on its way to Canaan. And we have the reference in Numbers 25, 1-3. Both the Ammonites and the Moabites hired Balaam to curse Israel as it journeyed toward the promised land and were thus forbidden to enter the Most High's assembly. And we see a reference in Deuteronomy 23, 3-4. But if you read Numbers, I think it begins in Numbers 22 all the way through 25. We see the story of Balaam and how he was commissioned by the Ammonites and the Moabites. I believe the king's name was Balak, and he just couldn't do it. He was supposed to curse the Israelites, but he couldn't do it. But instead, yes, he did give that king at the end a strategy on how he could make the Israelites fall, and that was through women, and through the worship of the other gods. So, however, the curse on these people, in reference to the Ammonites and the Moabites, is due to a lack of faith and not necessarily ethnicity. It's because they were going against the Most High. The Ammonites or Moabites who trusted in the Most High or in Yahweh, and I'm sorry for including this, but could be incorporated into Israel of the Most High. And we see that in the book of Ruth, Ruth was a Moabite woman that after the death of her husband chose to cling to her mother-in-law Naomi, who was an Israelite, and worship her God, and she became part of the bloodline of our Messiah. All right, so let's read some of those connecting precepts here. All right, so the first slide I had included 1 Peter 4:17-18, and it says, "For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of the Most High, and if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of the Most High? Now, if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where will the ungodly and the sinner appear?" So that just, once again, it just goes to show you that yes, his people will be judged, but how much more those who are ungodly and turning their backs on him. Okay, so some connections. Verse 2. Let me go back. So the first portion was against Ammon. So verse 2, set your face against the Ammonites and prophesy against them. The first instruction that was given to Ezekiel here. We have Jeremiah 27:3-4, and it says, "And send them to the king of Edom, the king of Moab, the king of the Ammonites, the king of Tyre, the king of Sidon, by the hands of the messengers who come to Jerusalem to Zedekiah, king of Judah, and command them to say to their masters, 'Thus says the Most High of hosts, the Adon of Israel, thus you shall say to your master. So Jeremiah was also instructed to prophesy against these nations. All right, so now these are some of the scripture references that I had on the slides. We're going to go through a few of them. We have Genesis 19, 37 through 38. And it says, the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name. Oy, what happened here? Okay, puppy. Sorry. No, not right now. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the people of Ammon to this day. So this was just, again, like I was mentioning in the historical portion of it, that the Ammonites were the descendants of Ben-Ami, the baby, the children of Lot. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Mom. Sorry, my son was just sharing a milestone with me. All right, so then we also have Jeremiah 9, 25 through 26. And it says, behold, the days are coming, says the Adon, that I will punish all who are circumcised with the uncircumcised. Egypt, Judah, Edom, the people of Ammon, Moab, and all who are in the farthest corners who dwell in the wilderness. For all these nations are uncircumcised, and all the house of Israel are uncircumcised in heart. And that goes back once again to the spiritual versus the physical, that you can do all the physical acts, all the physical obedience to the letter of the law. But if your heart is not right with him, then you are just like the Pharisees, practicing those traditions of men. All right, so we also have Deuteronomy 2:19, and it says, and when you come near the people of Ammon, do not harass them or meddle with them, for I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the descendants of Lot as a possession. So this goes back to confirming what I was speaking of over here. Let me go back to the slide. Where basically the Ammonites, wait, no, it was, I know I read this somewhere. Well, basically this was the land that was allotted to the Ammonites. It might be on the other slide after, but let me just go back and to the connections here. Deuteronomy 23, 3-4, it says, and an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Adon, even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Most High forever, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you. So again, we see that this people was cursed or basically not allowed to enter into the sheepfold because of their animosity towards the Israelites, towards the Most High's people. But as I mentioned also, not everybody had that sentence, so to speak, because even Ruth was counted as righteous. So as I mentioned, we have the 1 Samuel 11:2 here. And Nahash the Ammonite answered them, on this condition, I will make a covenant with you that I may put out all your right eyes. Oh, actually, I hadn't mentioned this yet. So another reference about the Ammonites, like their god, like Molech, the Ammonites were very cruel. So when Nahash the Ammonite was asked for terms of a treaty, and like we see here for Samuel 11:2, he proposed gouging out the right eye of each Israelite man. So we see that these were people that were very rough around the edges, if you want to look at it that way, and they had no love in their heart. The Israelite tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh also claimed the Amorite territory bordering that of the Ammonites. So some of the people did settle around them, but not within their land as they had been commanded not to do. Yes, they were savages, savages. All right. Let's see what else. So for verse 3, and that the majority of those precepts that I was sharing were for verses 2 and 3. So we're still here in this particular area. So we see obviously when the Ammonites saw the downfall of Judah, they basically celebrated. And that's also another reason why they are receiving these prophecies against them. So 1 Kings 14:21 says, and Rehoboam the son of Solomon reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he became king. He reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Most High had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. So Naamah was the wife of Solomon, as I mentioned earlier. He married an Ammonite, and that's what initiated the idol worship in Solomon as well. So another confirmation here in 1 Kings 11, 1 through 8, as I mentioned in the slides. But King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from the nations of whom the Most High had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. And this reminds me also of even the unequal yoke, that we would think of today, right? Us being very careful not to, I mean, if you are already married and you come into the truth and your spouse is not there with you yet, then that's another story. But for those who are not married yet and seeking a spouse or seeking to be found by a spouse, because he who finds a wife finds a good thing, right? We have to be very vigilant about who we are letting into our lives and making sure that that yoke is equal, not intermarrying with someone who may turn our hearts away after their gods. Yasmin. So Solomon clung to these in love, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Most High, his Elohim, as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did evil in the sight of the Adon, and did not follow the Adon, as did his father David. Then Solomon built a high place for Shemash, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the people of Ammon. And he did likewise for all of his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. And I wanted to mention this idol here in this picture. This is Shemash, however you pronounce it. And Yasmin said, kind of reminds me how it takes one wrong decision to ruin the Most High's plans for our lives. Yes, absolutely. That is so true. That is so true. We have to seek the Holy Spirit in all things, and let his Ruach lead us in all things. Trust him to lead us in all things. And as I mentioned earlier as well, what the Ammonites would do to pregnant women of the lands that they would seize. We have Amos 1:13 that says, thus says the Adon, for 3 transgressions of the people of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away its punishment, because they ripped open the women with child in Gilead, that they may enlarge their territory. So sad. We also have Proverbs 17:5 that says, he who mocks the poor reproaches his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. And this is obviously in reference to verse 3, speaking once again about the Ammonites and how they were basically celebrating the downfall of the Most High's people. And Proverbs 24:17 and 18, same. That says, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Adon see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So we have to make sure that, you know, we don't celebrate the downfall of other people like these nations did, and therefore, you know, lose the presence of the Most High, and lose his protection, just lose him altogether. Loving him and loving our neighbor as ourself, always. Then we also have Deuteronomy 28, and this is connecting to verse 4. We have verses 33 and verse 51. It says, a nation whom you have not known shall eat the fruit of your land and produce of your labor, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed continually. And they shall eat the increase of your livestock and the produce of your land until you are destroyed. They shall not leave you grain or new wine or oil or the increase of your cattle or the offspring of your flocks until they have destroyed you. So, just connecting once again, like I said, to verse 4, because this is what the Most High was proclaiming against them, that they will be delivered as a possession, that the people would encamp among them and make their dwellings among them, eat their fruit, and drink their milk. Okay. We also have Deuteronomy 3:11 for verse 5 and Psalm 83:18 for verse 5 as well. So Deuteronomy 3:11 says, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in Reba of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. And Reba was the capital of Ammon, just for reference, because it's also mentioned in verse 5. And I will make Reba a stable for camels and Ammon a resting place for flocks. And then Psalm 83:18 that says that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Adon, are the Most High over all the earth. And he says it over and over again, you know, like, I'm going to show you who I am so that you will know that I am the Adon. All right, so verse 6. For thus says the Adon Elohim, because you clapped your hands, stamped your feet, and rejoiced. Again, they were celebrating the downfall of the people of the Most High. Zephaniah 2:8-10 says, I have heard the reproach of Moab and the insult of the people of Ammon, with which they have reproached my people and made arrogant threats against their borders. Therefore, as I live, says the Adon of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, surely Moab shall be like Sodom, and the people of Ammon like Gomorrah, overrun with weeds and salt pits and a perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall plunder them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. This they shall have for their pride, because they have reproached and made arrogant threats against these people of the Adon of hosts. So you mess with them, you mess with me, basically. We're gonna read the whole of Obadiah 1. Well, I think I have actually, yeah, I have verses 1-16 later on. So I'm gonna skip over this one now. You can make a reference if you like, just write it down. This one connecting in verse 6 as well. But I'm gonna, just for the sake of not repeating, I'm gonna read the whole of the chapter in a few. We also have Nahum 3:19, and this is also for verse 6. It says, your injury has no healing, your wound is severe. All who hear news of you will clap their hands over you, for upon whom has not your wickedness passed continually? Okay, and continuing verse 7, we have Amos 1:14 through 15, and it says, but I will kindle a fire in the wall of Reba, and it shall devour its palaces amid shouting in the day of battle, and a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. Their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes together, says the Adon. So, again, like I said, well, we have it also referencing Reba here, but this, like I said, this is the capital of Ammon. So he's speaking of what is going to happen to those people once again in Amos. And as we said earlier in verse 13 of Amos 1, is where they were speaking about what the people did to the pregnant women in Gilead, ripping their wombs open. All right, we also have Jeremiah 49:2. It says, therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Adon, that I will cause to be heard an alarm of war in Reba of the Ammonites. It shall be a desolate mound, and her villages shall be burned with fire. Then Israel shall take possession of his inheritance, says the Most High. Okay, so now Numbers 25:1 through 3, and this was now we're going into Moab. Okay. Now, also, and given the incestuous, I just wanted to add, origins of Moab and Ammon, we are not surprised that the contact with these people often brought much trouble for Abraham's children, which is, we are descendants of Abraham, right? So from the beginning, as these people sinned like their parents, it was a constant trouble when they were around and bringing about that type of influence over the people. So we have Numbers 25:1 through 3 that says, now Israel remained in Acacia Grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Adon was aroused against Israel. So that's just summarizing, but like I said, from Numbers 22 through 25, you're able to see how badly the Moabites wanted the Israelites to fall. So they basically used the women to seduce them and cause them to do just that. I have also Isaiah 15:1 through 9, and it says the burden against Moab. So this is when Isaiah was prophesying against Moab. It says, because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and destroyed, because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and destroyed. He has gone up to the temple and Dibon, to the high places to weep. Moab will wail over Nebo and over Medeba. On all their heads will be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they will clothe themselves with sackcloth. This reminds me of what I was speaking of earlier, the attire of mourning. On the tops of their houses and in their streets, everyone will wail, weeping bitterly. Heshbon and Elealeh will cry out. Their voice shall be heard as far as Jahaz. Therefore, the armed soldiers of Moab will cry out. His life will be burdensome to him. My heart will cry out for Moab. His fugitives shall flee to Zoar like a 3-year-old heifer. For by the ascent of Luhith, they will go up with weeping. For in the way of Horonaim, they will raise up a cry of destruction. For the waters of Nimrim will be desolate. For the green grass has withered away. The grass fails, there is nothing green. Therefore, the abundance they have gained and what they have laid up, they will carry to the brook of the willows. For the cry has gone all around the borders of Moab, its wailing to Eglaim, and its wailing to Beer Elim. For the waters of Dimon will be full of blood, because I will bring more upon Dimon, lions upon him who escapes from Moab, and on the remnant of the land. So this is a little bit more in-depth prophecy against Moab, but it was during we know that Isaiah was prophesying years before the exile took place. But this is a future prophecy that was being proclaimed and spoken against Moab in his time. And like I said, just in more detail. And then verse 9, let me go back. Therefore, behold, I will clear the territory of Moab of the cities on its frontier, the glory of the country. So these three lands here are being referenced. And so we have Numbers 32, 37 through 38. And the children of Reuben built Heshbon and Elialeh and Kirjathaim, Nebo, and Baal-meon, their names being changed, and Shibma, and they gave other names to the cities which they built. So again, it's interesting because it looks like Nebo was part of Moab. If we look back at this prophecy over here, that they would weep over Nebo. I read over here, Moab will wail over Nebo and over Medeba. So obviously we know that those lands were like one right on top of the other. And as I mentioned earlier, Reuben had settled in the land of the Amorites. So, they were very close, in close proximity to one another. All right, then I also have for verse 10, to the men of the east, I will give it as a possession together with the Ammonites, that the Ammonites may not be remembered among the nations. Psalm 83, 3 through 6 says, they have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more, for they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites. And I believe this goes on to mention other nations that all conspired together against Israel. So Moab was part of that as well. And finally, for this portion, I also have Jude 1:15, tying in with verse 11, and I will execute judgments on Moab, and they shall know that I am the Adon. To execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So just a connection there that the Most High will perpetuate his judgment on the people. Okay, so Sylvie, you can, I guess, just read the last 6 verses and I'll break them down as we go along.
Okay. Thus says the Adon Elohim, because of what Edom did against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and has greatly offended by avenging itself on them. Therefore, thus says the Adon Elohim, I will also stretch out my hand against Edom, cut off man and beast from it, and make it desolate from Teman. Dedan shall fall by the sword. I will lay my vengeance on Edom by the hand of my people Israel, that they may do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury. And they shall know my vengeance, says the Adon Elohim. Thus says the Adon Elohim, because the Philistine dealt vengefully and took vengeance with a spiteful heart to destroy because of the old hatred. Therefore, thus says the Adon Elohim, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistines, and I will cut off the Cherethites, and destroy the remnant of the sea coast. I will execute great vengeance on them with furious rebukes, and they shall know that I am the Adon when I lay vengeance upon them.
Thank you. All right, so two more nations that are being prophesied against, and these are also very common adversaries of the Israelites. So starting with Edom, let's go to the slides again. So who were the Edomites? The Edomites were the descendants of Esau, the firstborn of Isaac and the twin brother of Jacob. So if you recall when Rebecca was pregnant, in the womb, Esau and Jacob struggled together, and the Most High told their mother that they would become two nations, with the older one serving the younger. And that's in Genesis 25, which we will be reading as well. And so as an adult, Esau rashly sold his inheritance to Jacob for a bowl of soup, and he hated his brother afterward for it. Esau became the father of the Edomites, and Jacob became the father of the Israelites. And the two nations continued to struggle through most of their history. In the Bible, Seir, which was mentioned earlier, Basra, and Selah are references to Edom's land and capital. Selah is better known today as Petra, and the name Edom comes from a Semitic word meaning red. So if you've read also Genesis, the story about Edom, or Esau rather, he had a body full of red hair. Okay, so who were the Philistines? So the Philistines are remembered as an uncircumcised people with advanced technology and formidable military. So we're going to read a few of these precepts as well. The Philistines frequently encroached on Israelite territory, which led to some battles, including the famous clash between David, the Israelite, and Goliath, the Philistine, which is in 1 Samuel 17. Yes, go ahead. They were condemned for being idol worshippers, worshiping the fish god Dagon. So you can see that fish god here. And this is just a rendition of David and Goliath. And you can see, obviously, the Philistines were giants. In short, the Philistines are portrayed quite negatively in the scriptures. So we're going to read some of those connections now as well. And Yasmin said, yes, these people always wanted to worship something. Yes, from the beginning, it's like they wanted, and even the Most High's people, they wanted a tangible person or something tangible to worship. They needed to see something physically in front of them, having the presence of the Most High. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night was not enough for them. And they coveted the nation's gods because they thought that was doing something. Going after the works of God, the prosperity gospel, all the uh physical things that could come from it, right? Potentially. selling their inheritance for a bowl of soup. So here, Genesis 25, we have verse 23 and then verses 30 through 34. And it says, "And the Most High said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." And we know that Esau was born before Jacob. He came out of the womb before. And I believe this, yes, that Jacob, he came out holding on to Esau's heel. And Esau said to Jacob, and this goes on in verse 30, when Esau sold his inheritance to Jacob. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with that same bread stew, for I am weary." Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright as of this day." And Esau said, "Look, I am about to die. So what is this birthright to me?" Then Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. I should have looked for the connection in Jasher. But if those of you who read through Jasher with us when Liz was doing the Torah portions might recall that Esau came in seeking refuge because he had just slain, I believe it was Nimrod. Am I right, Liz? I don't know. Yes, he had just slain Nimrod, and so he was running away from Nimrod's army who were seeking to kill him, to retaliate. So this is why he says here, "Look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me?" Like he thought he was just, yes, he was as good as dead. So selling his birthright to Jacob did not have much value to him until he realized the value of it. Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry, my son is making a smoothie right now. I don't know if you guys can hear the blender, so I apologize. So then we also have Joshua 24:4. Okay, thank you. It says, "To Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. To Esau I gave the mountains of Seir to possess, but Jacob and his children went down to Egypt." So as I mentioned, in the slides, Seir was part of, back up here. It's not mentioned here, but it was part of the land that the Edomites had. Then we also have 1 Kings 14:7. It says, "Go tell Jeroboam, thus says the Adon Elohim of Israel, because I exalted you from among the people and made you ruler over my people Israel." Why did I have that one here? Oh no, it was actually supposed to be 2 Kings. Let me see if I can change it really quick. Okay. There we go. So 2 Kings 14:7 says he killed 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt and took Selah by war and called its name Joktheel to this day. So that's just a reference to part of the downfall of Edom. And then Jeremiah 49:7 through 22. This is very long, so I'm not going to read it. I just put it here also as a reference. I should have mentioned this earlier too. I think, let me see. Well, basically, Jeremiah 47, Jeremiah 48, and Jeremiah 49 are 3 chapters that also speak about these prophecies against these nations. So you can make note of them if you'd like, in conjunction with this chapter. But as you can see, it's very long, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing. But I do want to read Obadiah because I said that we were going to read the whole chapter 1 here, so I have it here. All right, so it says, and this is Obadiah 1 through 16. I'm not sure if it's the whole chapter. I think it might be, but let me just double check. Oh my gosh, these children are on another level today.
I love cheese sticks.
Abby.
Cheese is good.
Okay, no, so the Obadiah chapter 1, well, it's the only chapter. It goes through verse 21, but I'm just going to read through verse 16. So it says, the vision of Obadiah. Thus says the Adon Elohim concerning Edom. We have heard a report from the Adon, and a messenger has been sent among the nations, saying, arise and let us rise up against her for battle. Behold, I will make you small among the nations. Papi, please, please. Behold, I will make you small among the nations. You shall be greatly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you. You who dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. You who say in your heart, who will bring me down to the ground? Though you ascend as high as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says the Adon. If thieves had come to you, if robbers by night, oh, how you will be cut off. Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If grape gatherers had come to you, would they not have left some gleanings? Oh, how Esau shall be searched out, how his hidden treasures shall be sought after. All the men in your confederacy shall force you to the border. The men at peace with you shall deceive you and prevail against you. Those who eat your bread shall lay a trap for you. No one is aware of it. Will I not in that day, says the Adon, even destroy the wise men from Edom and understanding from the mountains of Esau? Then your mighty men, O Taman, shall be dismayed, to the end that everyone from the mountains of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For violence against your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. In that day that you stood on the other side, in that day that strangers carried captive his forces, when foreigners entered the gates and cast lots for Jerusalem, even you were as one of them. But you should not have gazed on the day of your brother in the day of his captivity, nor should you have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction, nor should you have spoken proudly in the day of distress. You should have not entered the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Indeed, you should have not gazed on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. You should not have stood at the crossroads to cut off those among them who escaped, nor should you have delivered up those among them who remained in the day of distress. For the day of the Adon upon all the nations is near. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reprisal shall return upon your own head. For as you drink on my holy mountain, so shall all the nations drink continually. Yes, they shall drink and swallow, and they shall be as though they had never been. So again, like I said, this chapter, this book, it's only one chapter, is against Edom. And if we look at it through the lens of one who is out of covenant, one who mocks those who are in covenant with the Most High, we can easily equate this same type of judgment, to the people and what's going to happen, the destruction that is going to happen as a result of it. So we do have some Revelation that I'm gonna read as well, but let me go ahead and read a few more precepts here. And I had read Amos 1, I read 13, 14, and 15. So I'm gonna read 11 through 12. I know it's a little bit out of order, but the prophets kind of sometimes also they addressed the nations in different times. So it says, thus says the Adon, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away its punishment, because he pursued his brother with the sword and cast off all pity. His anger tore perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Taman, which shall devour the palaces of Basra. And then Psalm 137 and 7. Remember, O Adon, against the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it to its very foundation. So again, this is basically just the Most High executing judgment on a land, on a people who hated him, who hated his people from the beginning. And all because Esau sold his birthright and despised his brother for it. Then we have Malachi 1, verses 3 and 4, and this is connecting to verse 13. And it says, but Esau I have hated, and laid waste his mountains and his heritage for the jackals of the wilderness. Even though Edom has said, we have been impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus says the Adon of hosts, they may build, but I will throw down. They shall be called the territory of wickedness, and the people against whom the Adon will have indignation forever. And then Nahum 1, 2 to 4. Isaiah 63, 1 through 6. And then we have Revelations as well that I'll read. These all tie with verse 14, which says, I will lay my vengeance on Edom by the hand of my people Israel, that they may do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, says the Adon Elohim. So Nahum 1, 2 to 4 says, the Most High is jealous, and the Adon avenges. The Adon avenges and is furious. The Adon will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserves wrath for his enemies. The Adon is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Adon has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and makes it dry, and dries up all the rivers. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the flower of Lebanon wilts. And then, as I said, Isaiah 63, 1 through 6. Who is this who comes from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This one who is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your red apparel and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. For I have trodden them in my anger and trampled them in my fury. Their blood is sprinkled upon my garments, and I have stained all my robes. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed one has come. I look, but there is no one to help, and I wondered that there was no one to uphold. Therefore, my own arm brought salvation for me, and my own fury, it sustained me. I have trodden down the peoples in my anger, made them drunk in my fury, and brought down their strength to the earth. And this is a great chapter in Isaiah, pointing to Messiah. So we see, of course, that his judgment comes to Edom. Isaiah is speaking about Messiah coming from Edom with dyed garments from Basra, wearing the blood of the people on his garments. So again, we know that that judgment is going to come from the Most High, whether it's through war or famine or bloodshed. Most likely a combination of all of that. Revelation 6:16 through 17. And said to the mountain and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the land. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? And I believe it was the people of Edom who were in the mountain. So that reference right there is just, pointing to the fact that the people in the mountains will be wanting to hide. And it, if you think about modern day now, the elites running to their tunnels, seeking refuge in that day, in the day of the Adon, they won't be able to find rest or comfort or safety because they're not going to be able to hide. All right, so now moving on to the last portion, the last three scriptures here, we have with verse 15, Isaiah 14:29 through 31, as well as, oh wait, hold on. Oh, actually, sorry. So these are some of the connecting precepts that I mentioned from the slides that I didn't read yet. So let me read these first. And this is in reference to the Philistines. So Judges 14:3, we have, then his father and mother said to him, and this is in regards to Samson, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren or among all my people that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me well. So we see that Samson, who was one of the judges of Israel, married a Philistine woman, and he ended up being the one to defeat the Philistines at the end of his story, but not after having gone through all of the things that he went through because of the relationship that he started out with the Philistine woman and then with Delilah thereafter. I don't remember the name of his wife before Delilah. I can't remember it right now. I'm not sure if she was named in the book of Judges. Then we have 1 Samuel 13:19 through 20. And it says, now there was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the lands of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make swords or spears. But all the Israelites would go down to the Philistines to sharpen each man's plowshare, his mattock, his axe, and his sickle. And so this is just speaking to the the advanced technology and formidable military, as I mentioned earlier, that the Philistines were known for. And it seems like they manipulated things. They took resources away from the Hebrews, causing them to have to go to them for those things. But if we look at, and I can maybe pull it up here really quick, knowing that the Philistines were descendants of the giants. Let's go to Enoch 8. And Azazel, this is Enoch 8, and Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. So, why do I reference this? Because as we know in Genesis 6, Enoch 6 through 8, we see how the angels looked upon the women of man, the daughters of men, as they're referred to, and had relations with them. And from there, the Nephilim were born. And their ongoing generations after that, the Philistines being one of those. So they had that gift of making weapons. So the Israelites would go to them for those things. All right, so we have also Exodus 13:17, which says, Then it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that the Most High did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near, for the Most High said, lest perhaps the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So once again, the Philistines were a very powerful people in the sense of war, of being able to fight. And this is a reference to their god Dagon. So we have 1 Samuel 5:1-5. And it says, Then the Philistines took the ark of the Most High and brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. When the Philistines took the ark of the Most High, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod arose early in the morning, there was Dagon fallen on its face to the earth before the ark of the Most High. So they took Dagon and set it in its place again. And when they arose early the next morning, there was Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of the Most High. The head of Dagon and both the palms of its hands were broken off on the threshold. Only Dagon's torso was left of it. Therefore, neither the priests of Dagon nor any who come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. So we see immediately here that the Most High, he made his presence known in the presence of that false god that the Philistines worshipped. All right, I think, and this is the last one here. So Isaiah 2:6 says, For you have forsaken your people, the house of Jacob, because they are filled with eastern ways. They are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they are pleased with the children of foreigners. So we see an intermingling took place also with the Philistines at one point, which roused up the anger of the Most High. And then Isaiah 14:29-31 says, Do not rejoice, all of you Philistia, because the rod that struck you is broken. For out of the serpent's roots will come forth a viper, and its offspring will be a fiery flying serpent. The firstborn of the poor will feed, and the needy will lie down in safety. I will kill your roots with famine, and it will slay your remnant. Wail, O gate, cry, O city. All of you Philistia are dissolved. For smoke will come from the north, and no one will be alone in his appointed times. So just another prophecy against Philistia, or the Philistines. And that was a connection to verse 15. Also this one, so verse 15 again says, Thus says the Most High Elohim, because the Philistines dealt vengefully and took vengeance with a spiteful fear to destroy because of the old hatred. So again, this 3 very short verses here. So we're just gonna read through the connections. Zechariah 9:5-8 says, Ashkelon shall see it and fear. Gaza also shall be sorrowful, and Ekron, for he dried up her expectation. The king shall perish from Gaza, and Ashkelon shall not be inhabited. A mixed race shall settle in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines. I will take away the blood from his mouth, and the abominations from between his teeth. But he who remains, even he shall be for our Elohim, and shall be like a leader in Judah, and Ekron like a Jebusite. I will camp around my house because of the army, because of him who passes by and him who returns. No more shall an oppressor pass through them, for now I have seen with my eyes. So again, as we have seen over and over again throughout tonight's portion, the Most High is seeking to clean house for those who have chosen violence against him, essentially. And then lastly, we have just two more precepts here. Jeremiah 47, 1 through 7. And this, you can put it beside verse 16. It says, the word of the Adon that came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Philistines before Pharaoh attacked Gaza. Thus says the Adon, behold, waters rise out of the north, and shall be an overflowing flood. They shall overflow the land and all that is in it, the city and those who dwell within. Then the men shall cry, and all the inhabitants of the land shall wail at the noise of the stamping hooves and his strong horses, at the rushing of his chariots, at the rumbling of his wheels. The fathers will not look back for their children, lacking courage, because of the day that comes to plunder all the Philistines, to cut off from Tyre and Sidon every helper who remains. For the Adon shall plunder the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Caphtor. Baldness has come upon Gaza. Ashkelon is cut off with the remnant of their valley. How long will you cut yourself, O sword of the Adon? How long until you are quiet? Put yourself up into the scabbard. Rest and be still. How can it be quiet, seeing the Adon has given it a charge against Ashkelon and against the seashore? There he has appointed it. So we are going to go into Tyre and Sidon next week. But again, we see that these bordering lands are all being jumbled together because they are lands who were not of the bloodline of Israel, not in covenant, and all basically practicing acts of hatred towards the Israelites all throughout their time there. And lastly, we have Psalm 9:16. The Adon is known by the judgment he executes. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Meditation, Selah. So all in all, we know once again that the wicked will not stand. And as I mentioned, let me go back to that slide. In First Peter 4:17 through 18, that judgment may begin in the Most High's household, but those who oppose the Most High's people will get what is coming to them. And the nations the Most High is addressing, they're basically, yes, Yasmin said, like right now they're happy, but their end isn't too good, just like Pharaoh. Yes, and as we're going to read next week in chapter, I believe it's chapter 28, speaks about Hasatan, about the I'm gonna hold on, let me give a little sneak peek here. I know since Sylvie isn't gonna be with us next week, well, hopefully you'll get a chance. But so this is in chapter 28. There's a prophecy against the king of Tyre, but it's really Lucifer that is being spoken of here. And basically that he was anointed as a guardian cherub, ordained as such on the holy mountain of God, walking among the fiery stones, blameless in all of his ways. But his heart became proud on account of his beauty, and he was corrupted in his wisdom because of his splendor. So he was thrown down to earth and made a spectacle of before kings. So all of that to say that in the same way, all of these mighty men are fallen because of their acts against the Most High. So with that being said, this portion is done. We have completed it for tonight. Thank you all for joining. And as always, I pray that this was edifying and that you were able to receive something. We'll catch you again next week. Shalom.